Can I ask a question? Log grievance with your metagame video. It said leader is important to check something like death. We just called it leech based death. Why do we need two cards that do that in two different ways? Let's talk about leader. Let's pull up a leader deck and have the conversation about leader. All right. So my fundamental contention is that leader is meant as a safety valve against not only Deathwave style decks, but also Serra style decks. And I think he was more designed to beat the Serra style decks. I think that was more of a thing they saw coming, was decks that played a lot of cards on turn 6. I think that's something they were like, okay, that'll probably happen. We need a safety valve for that, right? I think Deathwave, I won't say that was like a predictable thing that would happen. I think it ended up, especially in the context of She-Hulk, being like a lot more reliable and a lot more weird than I would expect that they were doing things with. But my fundamental contention with leader, and this is something I've been kicking around for a while, it only really formulated within the last couple days, but I think it sounds true to me. You can let me know if it sounds true to you. Is that leader is a tech card against the way the game wants you to play. And what I mean by that is the game being a betting game, it wants you to not reveal your power until late in the game. Like, you can see this in how stakes get doubled at the end. The value is generated from doing that, right? And so the reason I think that leader sucks so much, that leader is such a huge pain in the ass for everyone to deal with, is that everyone builds their decks with that sort of implicit understanding. It's as simple as, like, it's a basic fundamental thing of the game, right? You want to conceal as much power as you can until turn 6. That's just how the shit works. That's like a basic thing. And what leader is a tech against is doing that. And that's why he sucks. Like, if you look at this deck, it does everything the opposite of what the game wants you to do, right? We're putting a bunch of power on the battlefield early. They know they're going to lose. Like, we're giving up cube equity in order to just be like, I'm winning every game. I'm winning every game every time, right? And so what Jeff asked, which was an astute question, was, if you think leader beats Deathwave, why do we need leech also? If you think both of them beat Deathwave, why do we need two of them? And I think that's valid, but I think they do different things. I think in a world where Deathwave doesn't exist, leader would be a pretty normal tech against, like, Serra decks, right? Leader would be a card that you played against Serra, and, like, sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, because there's actually a lot of interplay between Serra and leader and filling up deck slots and things like that, right? Like, that would be a fun thing to do. Leader against Serra stuff is fun to do. Leader in the metagame where Serra doesn't exist and everyone is just playing like one card a turn is a very different card. And that's sort of why his power is at the level that it is right now. It's not all his fault. I don't even know if I would say he's a symptom more than he's the problem, because he is kind of the problem. But I think basically the reason you see these complaints about leader to the degree that you see the complaints about leader is because when you get into pool 3, you unlock all these cool little build around cards. You unlock Wave and Death. You unlock all these things that let you do cool things. And in this game, most of the cool things are things that let you put power on the board on turn 6, yeah? And leader is a tech against those. And so, like, your new cool thing that you just got gets completely shit-canned by leader. You open Cherie and you wanted to play like a super big guy? Sorry, it's mine now. I don't care. And, like, that, I think, feels worse for people than anything else. I do agree with Jeff Hoagland's take that leech is better for the game than leader, because at least you can retreat for leech. You can't retreat for leader. And when we talk about, like, why this happened and why it wasn't caught in the beta, it's because Magic was basically mandatory in the beta, and Magic on turn 6 being playable makes leader a lot worse. So that's sort of where I'm at with leader. In my opinion, if you wanted to nerf him, you would probably tone him down to a 6-2 or a 6-3. Thinking Cherie's only for big guys sounds kind of provincial. Right, but, like, how good do you think the average player of this game is? Seriously. Like, how good do you think the average player of this game is? Because it took me 4 hours of playing with the card before I put her in a deck list with good cards. It took me 4 hours, and I'm apparently pretty okay. So, like, the average player mostly just runs into this, and they're like, this is complete fucking bullshit. And I think that matters a lot more. I think it's super important that, like, I think the feel of leader matters way, way more than his actual power. The average player, yeah, the average player is pretty average at this game. And so, like, let's say you just got Deadpool, and you go through all this effort to make a big Deadpool, right? And then leader just comes along and takes a huge dump on your entire deck, right? I think it matters that the whole entire meta is skewed towards expensive cards, and not many things other than leader punish that. I think that is where it is his fault, right? Because he's supposed to be a tech card that's good against, like, Sarah decks, right? But instead, he's a tech card that's good against, like, I don't know, let's say you play the Hulk, right? Like, obviously, there aren't many decks that play the Hulk, but, like, you play the Hulk, oh, that loses to leader, right? You want to play some big guys on turn 6? Sorry, dude, that loses to leader. The main problem with... Okay, no, I want to address the Mr. Negative thing, because I think that is an extremely overblown complaint. People love talking about how, like, you can't nerf things power, or they'll be better in Mr. Negative, and that's just not true. That is just not true. They nerfed Sarah's power. She's worse in Mr. Negative. Like, she is now, like, basically a cut in that deck. Like, people like to talk about how, like, oh, it'll make it better in Mr. Negative, but Mr. Negative is a deck that wants to be exploding on its own terms on turn 6, right? It wants to not be playing your cards. It wants to be playing the things that it put in the deck to be, like, super broken. It wants to be doing a ton of ridiculous garbage, right? It doesn't really want to be playing leader. Mr. Negative wants to fill the board up on its own terms. It wants its cards to be the things that it's doing, right? So I think nerfing leader's power is totally fine. I think it's a good idea even to, like, just nudge him down a little bit and say, you know, he's no longer this catch-all solution. I think the real issue that you'll run into, though, is that I'm pretty sure I would play this deck if they deleted the card leader, and that's not good. I don't think that's a good thing. Like, I'm pretty sure I would just do this regardless. It's just doing really strong things. I would play this if leader was a 6-2. I'm pretty sure it would be great. So, like, when we talk about the problems here, yeah, leader's the most annoying one, and maybe you just nerf him because he's really annoying, but I'm pretty sure I would still farm with this deck if he was nerfed. I'm pretty sure this would still be the best thing you could be doing. And I hope that's not true. Like, but I think I would still play basically exactly this. What do you think about Jeff Hoagland's suggestion of leader turn 5 only, like Magic? I think that would ruin his... If your goal is to delete leader from the game, that would do it. I don't necessarily think that's an unfair goal to have, but it's not the first thing I would try, right? If your goal is, I don't think this card should exist, Leech fills its role, and I think that's kind of what Jeff was getting at earlier with the question that prompted this whole thing. If your goal is, I don't think Leader should exist because Leech fills the role just as well, which I don't think is true, but if you start with that premise, then yeah, it seems pretty reasonable to me. My real platform for what I would nerf, just right off the bat, I would nerf every tech card except for Enchantress by 1 power. Just straight up. I am anti-big tech in here. I'm going to lead hearings on how every tech card needs to be nerfed. I looked at this on SnapFan the other day. And by the other day, I mean, like, actually 5 hours ago. The top 10 most played cards, like, 5 of them are, like, Killmonger, Armor, Shang-Chi, Leader, and Cosmo. And it's like, that sucks. Those cards you should be paying way more of a cost for that, because those are the top 5 top 5 of the top 10 in play rate are those tech cards. And it's not like they're overplayed either, because all 5 of them are in the top 1/3 of win rate. They're all 5 in the top 1/3 of win rate. And like, that's not good. When like 5 of the most played cards are like these really supposedly specific tech cards, and they're all still really good. I think I would knock all of them down by a power, at least. As far as Arrow, I think she's probably the best card in the game. You should knock her to like 6 or 7. Arrow's ridiculous. That's win rate in the deck, just being included. Just being included in the deck. All of them, the lowest win rate of all of the tech cards that I just listed was Killmonger at 54%, something like 54.6, sorted for pool 3 decks in this season. So I just don't think that the top 5, like 5 of the top 10 most played cards should be tech cards. I don't think that those cards should be in the top third of win rates, especially at the rate they're being played. I think that's a sign that they're a little too strong. And I think my platform would be nudge them all down a bit, all 5 of them. But I've always been a little bit anti the popularity of the tech cards. Staples are always the most played. Why are all the staples the cards that say your shit doesn't work? That's my issue. The fact that they are tech cards means that they are cards that fundamentally just feel bad to lose to. You're playing a Wong deck, Cosmo comes down, your deck doesn't work. You're playing a Destroy deck, you play a Bucky, they play an Armor, your deck doesn't work. You're playing Zoo, they play a Killmonger, your deck doesn't work. And obviously there are ways to play around all these cards. It's not as like simple as I'm making it sound. But the fact that all of these cards are so popular is probably why people don't like the metagame. You know what I mean? I just think that the fact that there are so many cards that say your deck doesn't work in the top 5, top 10 cards that are being played the most is notable. I'm not saying every game needs to be just who can put the most points on the board, but it's definitely notable. Anyway, I hope that covers it. I will open the floor up to questions now. I've been sort of not looking at chat very much. So let me tab back in and look at the questions. Was that data across all players? That was pool 3+ decks only. The data was for only decks in pool 3. I think it's healthy to have those cards. I think they're a little too splashable right now. Like, if you're playing Killmonger deck, I'm playing a Killmonger deck right now. Can you honestly tell me you would cut Killmonger if he cost 2, if he had 2 power? I would still play him. Could you tell me that you would not play Leader if he had 3 power? I would still play him. You'd still play Armor at a 2/2. Like, these are all cards that I would still play. What kind of player should Second Dinner be balancing the game for? Average. Not me. They should not be balancing the game for me. I want to be very clear about that. They should be balancing the game for someone who is like rank 40 and mid pool 3. In your ideal world, what cards do you want to be the most played in the game? I would want a variety of synergistic cards to be near the top of the metagame. What does that player want to do? I don't know. That's not my job. Anyway, that's sort of where I'm at with this. I think generally the tech cards are a little too strong. And I at the same time, I do think people think Leader is a little stronger than he is, but he's definitely still strong enough to get a little bit whacked by the Nerf bat. Right, but the fact that they're so ubiquitous means they've exceeded their role is sort of what I'm getting at, right? The fact that the tech cards go in everything just as, like, good cards, that's kind of the issue I'm getting at. No, Leader is a tech card. Like, the fact that he's too strong is what makes him a win condition. But, like, fundamentally, his idea is to be a tech card. Like, he's supposed to counter Explode on turn 6 decks. Like, that's what he's supposed to do. He's just too strong, and so he counters, like, most things. You know what I mean? I started using Leader after I saw your No Moon Girl deck yesterday. Can you explain his mechanics, turn order mattering, leaving spaces open in locations? So the way that Leader works is he will put whatever they play in whatever order they play it onto your board. And that means you want to value cards that are high in terms of power per space, so you can leave as many spaces as you need to play them. Cosmo in most decks, he's like the 5th most included card in the game in pool 3+ decks. They're really good. They're really flexible. Anyway, I'm done with... I'm all sweaty now, chat. Thanks for bearing with me.